The evening was meant to be a celebration of 15 years of marriage, 15 years of laughter, love, and life built together. I had spent the past week preparing for this night, every detail meticulously planned. The table was set, candles flickering softly, and the aroma of the dinner I had slaved over filled the house. All that was left was for Jessica and me to enjoy it. I was wearing my best suit, feeling a mix of excitement and pride. As I approached the front door with a bouquet of roses, I could hardly wait to see Jessica's reaction. The door creaked open, and I called out, "Jessica, I'm home." No response. I felt a twinge of unease but shrugged it off. Maybe she was in the kitchen, finishing up the last touches. I followed the soft sounds of laughter and music, my heart swelling with anticipation. The hallway was dimly lit, and I moved silently, eager to surprise her. I reached the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. The sight that greeted me stopped me dead in my tracks, my heart plummeting into my stomach. Jessica and Mike were in bed together. My best friend, my confidant, was entwined with my wife. Their laughter, once innocent and warm, now felt like a cruel joke played at my expense. The scene was burned into my mind, Jessica's eyes wide with shock, Mike's face turning pale as he scrambled to cover himself. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My knees almost gave way, and the bouquet fell from my hand, scattering roses across the floor. The festive ambiance I had so carefully orchestrated felt like a mockery now. "How could you?" The words escaped my lips in a whisper, more pained than angry. Jessica's eyes welled up with tears, but I couldn't bear to see her face. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the shattering of everything I had believed in. I turned on my heel and fled from the room, from the house, from the life I thought I knew. The only thing I could think to do was to get away, to leave the charade of our anniversary dinner behind me. I drove aimlessly, my thoughts a chaotic storm. I checked into a hotel, my mind racing. It was in that sterile, impersonal room that I began to grasp the gravity of what had just happened. Jessica had not only betrayed me but had done so most intimately and painfully possible. I stumbled into the hotel lobby, my mind still reeling from the evening's events. The grandeur of the space did nothing to calm my shattered nerves. I slumped into one of the plush armchairs, my eyes glazed over, lost in thought. The soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of glasses from the hotel bar did little to penetrate the fog that surrounded me. I felt a weight pressing down on my shoulders, an invisible force that seemed determined to crush me. Just then, I heard a familiar voice, one that I hadn't heard in years. "James? Is that you?" I looked up, squinting to make out the figure approaching me. It was Laura, an old college friend, her face illuminated by the soft light of the lobby. She had always had a warm presence, and seeing her now felt like a lifeline during my storm. "Laura?" I managed to croak out, my voice hoarse. "I can't believe it." She took a seat beside me, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." I swallowed hard, the floodgates of my emotions finally breaking open. I began to pour out the details of the night's events, the betrayal, the confrontation, the crushing disappointment. My voice trembled as I recounted every painful moment. Laura listened intently, her eyes never leaving mine. As I spoke, I saw her face shift from shock to sympathy. And then to determination. When I finally finished, I was spent, and my emotions drained. "James," Laura said softly, her voice firm yet comforting. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. You don't have to face it alone." Her words were a balm to my wounded soul. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, feeling more vulnerable than I ever had before. "Let me help," Laura offered. "I have some experience with these kinds of situations. We can figure out a plan and get you some support. You don't have to handle this on your own." I looked at her, a glimmer of hope breaking through the haze of my despair. "Really? You do that?" Laura nodded, her expression resolute. "Of course. Sometimes, a fresh perspective is exactly what you need. Let's start by taking a deep breath and figuring out your next steps." For the first time since I had left the house, I felt a flicker of something other than anguish, perhaps a hint of clarity. Laura's presence was a beacon in the darkness, and the promise of her help gave me a sliver of strength to face the days ahead. As we began to discuss potential actions, a small but crucial part of me began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to turn this devastation into something I could control. Laura and I spent the next few days working together with a singular focus. She was a whirlwind of efficiency, diving into the task of gathering evidence with an almost obsessive determination. I found myself clinging to her presence, using it as a lifeline in the tumultuous sea of my emotions. We started by compiling everything I had: texts, emails, and any other correspondence between Jessica and Mike. Each piece of evidence felt like a fresh wound, but Laura kept me grounded. She insisted on reviewing everything meticulously, searching for patterns and inconsistencies. "Here," Laura said one afternoon, pointing to a series of emails on my laptop. "Look at this." I squinted at the screen. The emails were between Jessica and an unknown recipient. They were filled with discussions about asset division, legal jargon, and detailed plans about the upcoming settlement. "These don't just hint at a divorce," Laura said, her voice steady. "They suggest that she's been planning this for a while, specifically how she could ensure she'd get a substantial part of your assets." My heart sank further. It was one thing to be betrayed, but to realize that Jessica had been plotting her exit strategy for so long was another level of betrayal altogether. Laura continued, "We need to dig deeper. Let's check her recent transactions and any financial dealings that might indicate she's been preparing for this." We reached out to a private investigator Laura knew, who quickly got to work. Over the next few days, he uncovered a series of financial transactions that were both suspicious and revealing. There were large transfers to a savings account in her name and withdrawals that seemed uncharacteristic. The final blow came when we found evidence of a hidden account. It wasn't just any account, it was set up in a way that made it difficult to trace and had been steadily accumulating funds. The timing of the transactions lined up with the start of our marital issues, and it was clear that Jessica had been planning for a major financial shift. As I reviewed the evidence Laura had helped compile, I felt a mixture of anger and numbness. The realization that Jessica had been orchestrating her exit from our marriage not just emotionally but financially was overwhelming. Laura placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "James, this is the proof you need. It's clear she's been scheming, and now you have everything to confront her with." I nodded, though my mind was still reeling. "Thank you, Laura. I don't know how I could have done this without you." Laura gave me a reassuring smile. "It's not over yet. We still need to plan the next steps, but we've got a solid foundation now. We can turn this around." With the evidence in hand, I began to feel a sense of resolve. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but having a clear picture of Jessica's deceit gave me the strength to face whatever came next. With the weight of the evidence heavy in my hands, I felt a surge of resolve. The betrayal wasn't just a personal affront, it had been a calculated move by Jessica. I knew I couldn't just walk away and leave everything behind. I needed to act, to reclaim some control over the shattered remains of my life. I had made up my mind, I was going to retaliate. And I was going to do it strategically. Laura and I sat in the hotel suite, the quiet hum of the city outside providing an incongruous backdrop to the intensity of our conversation. The room was scattered with papers, financial documents, and various pieces of evidence we had collected. "All right, Laura," I began, my voice steady but charged with purpose. "It's time to put a plan into action. I want to hit Jessica where it hurts the most, her reputation and her finances." Laura nodded, her expression serious. "I'm with you. What's the first step?" I took a deep breath, outlining my strategy. "First, we need to go public with the evidence of Jessica's deceit. If she's going to try to tear apart my life, I'll make sure the world knows exactly what kind of person she is." Laura leaned in, her eyes narrowing with focus. "We should prepare a detailed dossier. This includes emails, financial records, and anything that shows her premeditated intent. We need to be thorough." Exactly, I agreed. "We'll create a comprehensive report that highlights her planning and deceit. Once it's ready, we'll leak it to the media." Laura raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan to ensure it gets the attention you want?" "I have connections in the media," I said. "People who owe me favors. I'll leverage those connections to get the story picked up by major outlets." "It will be everywhere." Laura nodded approvingly. "And what about her financial situation? We need to make sure she can't easily access the funds she's been squirreling away." I explained. "I'll work with the financial investigator to tie up those accounts, making it clear that they were obtained through deceit." Laura smiled, a spark of admiration in her eyes. "That's a solid plan. We'll need to be meticulous about this. Every detail has to be perfect to ensure it all comes together." The intensity of the planning session was palpable. Every action we discussed felt like a deliberate step towards not just vindication, but a powerful form of retribution. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about ensuring that Jessica faced the full consequences of her actions. As we wrapped up the meeting, I felt a grim satisfaction. The path ahead was clear, and while I knew it would be fraught with difficulties, having a plan gave me a sense of purpose. Laura looked at me with a mixture of determination and sympathy. "We're in this together, James. We'll see it through." I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of strength. With Laura's help and the plan firmly in place, I was ready to take the next steps. The fight wasn't over, it had just begun. With my plan for retribution set into motion, I realized that I needed to transform my life, not just to execute my plan effectively but to regain my sense of control and purpose. If I was going to hit Jessica where it hurt, I had to do more than just expose her deceit. I needed to redefine myself and leverage that new image to its fullest. Laura had been a great help so far, but now it was time for me to take charge of my transformation. I began by revamping my professional life. I contacted old colleagues and reconnected with influential figures in my industry. I threw myself into high-profile projects, working long hours and using every opportunity to showcase my skills and dedication. I also updated my brand. A new wardrobe, a more polished appearance, and a commitment to attending key networking events helped to reshape how people perceived me. I started to receive more invitations to exclusive gatherings, and my professional reputation began to gain traction. Laura helped me navigate this transition, offering advice on how to make the most of my new opportunities. "The goal is to become a powerhouse in your field," she said one evening as we reviewed a list of upcoming events. "The more influential you become, the more effective your plan will be." I took her advice to heart. I immersed myself in strategic investments, ensuring that I was not only seen but heard. I began making headlines for my professional achievements, gradually shifting the public's focus from my woes to my successes. With each accomplishment, I felt a growing sense of empowerment. The more I built my new image, the more I was able to distance myself from the painful memories of my past life. My name became synonymous with success and resilience, and this shift in perception allowed me to move through circles I hadn't been able to access before. Simultaneously, I used my elevated status to prepare for the final phase of my plan. I worked closely with media contacts to ensure that the dossier on Jessica's deceit would be released at a time when it would have maximum impact. The juxtaposition of my newfound success with her scandalous behavior would magnify the repercussions of her actions. Laura and I continued to meet regularly, fine-tuning every detail of our strategy. We discussed how best to time the release of information, and I made sure that every move I made in my professional life would serve to reinforce the narrative I was creating. As the days turned into weeks, my reinvention was complete. I was no longer the man who had been blindsided by betrayal. I had become a symbol of success and resilience, poised to deliver the most impactful blow to those who had wronged me. Standing on the precipice of this new chapter, I felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. The transformation was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life and ensuring that Jessica faced the consequences of her actions in a way that was both thorough and impactful. The grand ballroom was buzzing with energy as I walked in, greeted by a flurry of well-dressed guests. The event I had organized was intended to be both a social gathering and a pivotal moment in my quest for retribution. The venue was luxurious, the decor impeccable, and every detail meticulously planned to ensure the evening's success. The guest list was a who's who of our social and professional circles, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances who were integral to our lives. They had been invited under the pretense of a celebration, but the real purpose of the evening was far more significant. As I moved through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries and catching up with old friends, my mind was focused on the centerpiece of the night, the dramatic unveiling of the truth about Jessica. The media had been tipped off, and I was confident that tonight's events would ensure that the story received the attention it deserved. The atmosphere was charged with excitement and anticipation. I had arranged for a short but impactful presentation, one that would leave no room for doubt about Jessica's deceit. I made my way to the stage, taking a moment to gather my thoughts before the big reveal. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice echoing through the grand hall. "Thank you for joining me this evening. Your presence means a great deal to me, and I'm grateful for your support." A polite murmur of appreciation followed. I could see Jessica across the room, her eyes flitting nervously between the guests and me. She was aware that something was coming, but I doubted she fully grasped the scale of what was about to unfold. "I want to share something very important with you all," I continued, my tone steady. "Recently, my life has been upended by some revelations that I believe everyone here should be aware of." With a press of a button, the large screen behind me flickered to life, displaying a series of carefully curated documents and screenshots. The images and text showcased Jessica's deceit, emails discussing her plans to divorce and manipulate our financial assets, as well as financial records detailing suspicious transactions. The crowd fell into a stunned silence as the evidence was laid bare. Gasps of shock rippled through the room as the full extent of Jessica's betrayal became evident. I watched as the faces of our friends and colleagues turned from curiosity to disbelief, their expressions reflecting the gravity of what they were seeing. The presentation continued with a news article one had arranged to be released just in time for the event. The headline read, "Local businessman exposes deception and betrayal. The truth behind a high-profile scandal." The article detailed the evidence and the impact of Jessica's actions, ensuring that her deceit would be discussed far beyond the walls of the ballroom. As the presentation concluded, I took a deep breath and faced the crowd. "I felt it was important for everyone to know the truth," I said, my voice unwavering. "The actions of one person can have far-reaching consequences, and we must hold ourselves accountable for our actions." The room was abuzz with conversations. The once jovial atmosphere replaced by an air of discomfort and contemplation. Friends who had once stood by Jessica were now whispering among themselves, their expressions a mix of sympathy for me and disapproval for her. I made my way through the crowd, receiving a range of reactions. Some were supportive, others were taken aback. The media coverage had ensured that Jessica's deception was out in the open, and I knew that her carefully maintained facade had been irrevocably shattered. As the evening drew to a close, I felt a profound sense of closure. The truth had been exposed, and Jessica's reputation, along with her plans, had been laid bare for all to see. The night had been a success in more ways than one, and as I left the venue, I knew that the next phase of my plan would soon follow. With the public revelation of Jessica's deceit and the subsequent damage to her reputation, it was time to shift gears and focus on the legal aspects of our separation. The exposure had been a crucial step, but now I needed to ensure that the legal process would hold Jessica accountable for her actions. I began by researching top divorce attorneys, looking for someone with a track record of handling complex and high-profile cases. After several consultations, I decided to hire Jonathan Blake, a highly regarded attorney known for his skill in navigating intricate legal battles. Jonathan's office was sleek and professional, reflecting his reputation. We sat in his conference room, and I laid out all the evidence we had accumulated: emails, financial documents, and media coverage. His eyes scanned through the materials with a sharp focus. "This is a solid foundation," Jonathan said after reviewing the documents. "We have ample evidence of Jessica's deceit and financial manipulations. Our strategy will be to build a strong case that highlights not only her betrayal but also the financial ramifications of her actions." Jonathan outlined a comprehensive plan for the divorce proceedings. "We'll file for divorce on the grounds of betrayal and financial misconduct. This will allow us to address both the personal and financial aspects of the case." I nodded, feeling a mixture of determination and apprehension. "What do we need to do next?" "First," Jonathan explained, "we need to prepare and file the divorce petition. This will include detailed accusations based on the evidence you provided. We'll also request an immediate court order to freeze any financial accounts that are potentially related to Jessica's manipulations." He continued to outline the steps involved: drafting the petition, gathering additional documentation, and preparing for potential counterarguments. Each step was carefully designed to ensure that Jessica's actions would be thoroughly examined in court. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan and his team worked diligently to prepare the case. We gathered more documentation, including financial records and testimonies from those who could attest to Jessica's manipulative behavior. Each piece of evidence was meticulously organized to present a clear and compelling case. Jessica's reaction was predictable but still unsettling. She hired her attorney and began to counter our claims, attempting to dispute the allegations and downplay her actions. The back-and-forth legal maneuvering only added to the tension, but I remained focused on the end goal. As the court date approached, I felt a sense of resolve. The public exposure had laid the groundwork for the legal proceedings, but the court would provide the final judgment. Jonathan was confident in our case, and his preparation gave me a sense of reassurance. The day of the court hearing arrived. I dressed in my best suit, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. Jonathan and I reviewed our strategy one last time before heading into the courtroom. The atmosphere was charged with tension as we prepared to present our case. Jessica entered the courtroom with her attorney, and our eyes briefly met. There was a brief flicker of emotion, but I remained focused on the task at hand. The legal process was about to unfold, and I was ready to see it through to its conclusion. As the hearing began, I listened intently to Jonathan's arguments, feeling a sense of pride in the strength of our case. The evidence was presented clearly, and each point was reinforced with solid documentation. I knew that the court would see the truth of Jessica's actions and the impact they had on my life. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with the legal groundwork laid and the evidence thoroughly presented, I felt confident that justice would prevail. The battle was far from over, but the wheels of the legal system were now in motion, and I was prepared to see it through to the end. The public humiliation I had orchestrated at the event had been a significant blow, but it was time to deliver a final, devastating punch. I reached out to a trusted journalist, Sophia Collins, who had a reputation for covering high-profile scandals. Sophia had been a friend for years, and her investigative skills and media connections were invaluable. We arranged to meet in her office, where I would provide her with the comprehensive story I wanted to share. Sophia's office was a hive of activity, filled with stacks of files and the constant hum of a busy newsroom. She greeted me warmly, her professional demeanor giving me confidence as we sat down to discuss the details. "James," Sophia began, "I've reviewed the preliminary materials you sent. This is a significant story, and it's clear that you have a strong case. What angle are you thinking of for the article? I want to be transparent and direct," I said. "The goal is to lay out the full extent of Jessica's betrayal, her manipulation, and the impact of her actions. The article must reflect the gravity of her deceit and the calculated nature of her plans." Sophia nodded, her fingers poised over her keyboard. "I'll make sure to present the evidence clearly and compellingly. This is going to be a major story, and we'll need to frame it in a way that captures the public's attention." I provided Sophia with all the evidence we had gathered, emails, financial documents, and the media coverage from the previous event. We reviewed each piece together, ensuring that the article would accurately and powerfully convey the full scope of Jessica's actions. Over the next few days, Sophia worked diligently on the article. She interviewed me for additional insights, and we fine-tuned the narrative to highlight the key points. The story was framed not only as a personal betrayal but also as a cautionary tale about the dangers of manipulation and deceit. The day before the article was scheduled to be published, Sophia gave me a preview. The headline was striking: "The Fall of a High-Profile Socialite, Inside the Scandalous Betrayal That Shook an Empire." The article detailed Jessica's elaborate scheme, including her attempts to undermine me financially and her calculated plans for divorce. The piece was thorough and sensational, complete with quotes from the documents, screenshots of emails, and details of the media coverage of the event. It was designed to captivate readers and ensure that Jessica's actions were laid bare for all to see. When the article was published, it made headlines across major news outlets. The impact was immediate and widespread. Social media buzzed with reactions, and the story was picked up by numerous platforms, ensuring that Jessica's name was prominently associated with scandal and deceit. The fallout was swift. Jessica's reputation, which had been carefully constructed over the years, began to crumble. The public's reaction ranged from shock to outrage, and she faced a barrage of criticism. Friends and acquaintances who had once been supportive distanced themselves, and her professional opportunities began to dry up. For me, the article was both a culmination of my efforts and a form of closure. The public exposure had achieved what I had set out to do. It had held Jessica accountable in the most visible way possible. I felt a complex mix of satisfaction and relief as the storm of media attention swirled around her. As I watched the events unfold, I knew that my quest for retribution was nearing its end. The final exposure not only confirmed the truth but also ensured that Jessica faced the consequences of her actions on a grand scale. The journey had been arduous, but I was finally ready to move forward with my life, leaving the past, and its betrayals, behind. As Jessica's public humiliation continued to unfold, it became clear that ensuring she received no financial benefit from our separation was crucial. The legal and media exposure had set the stage, but I needed to take concrete steps to protect my assets and ensure that Jessica would not profit from her deceitful actions. I turned to a team of financial consultants to help me navigate the complexities of asset protection. Their expertise was vital in securing my financial position and safeguarding against any potential claims Jessica might make. During our initial meetings, I explained the situation in detail, providing them with all the relevant documents and evidence of Jessica's manipulation. The team's task was to review and reorganize my financial holdings to ensure that everything was in order and that Jessica would have no claim to any part of my wealth. "We need to act quickly," one of the consultants, Karen, advised. "Given the nature of the situation, we should consider setting up legal barriers that will prevent Jessica from accessing any of your assets." Karen and her team went to work, implementing a series of measures designed to protect my financial interests. They restructured my investments, transferred assets into secured trusts, and established clear legal documentation to prevent any potential claims from Jessica. The process was thorough and meticulous, ensuring that every detail was addressed. While the financial protection was being put in place, I began working on a more aggressive strategy. I decided to create a shell company, a seemingly legitimate business designed to draw attention and, more importantly, to frame Jessica for financial misconduct. The concept was straightforward: establish a business that appeared genuine but was designed to fail and provide a basis for accusing Jessica of fraud. I enlisted the help of a business consultant, Michael, who specialized in creating and managing such entities. Michael and I worked together to set up the company, which we named Innovative Ventures LLC. The company's structure, financial projections, and operations were designed to look convincing but were ultimately flawed. We made sure to document everything meticulously, including fake transactions and financial reports, to build a convincing case. Once the company was operational, I arranged for Jessica to be indirectly linked to it through a series of manipulative maneuvers. I ensured that she would appear to have been involved in the company's operations, even though her actual role was minimal. The plan was to wait until the company's inevitable failure, at which point we would expose Jessica's supposed involvement. The financial discrepancies and the shell company's collapse would serve as evidence of her fraudulent activities, further damaging her reputation and leaving her in a precarious financial position. As the weeks passed, the shell company began to attract attention. I manipulated media reports and financial forums to increase visibility and ensure that Jessica's name was linked to it. The stage was set for the company's downfall, and the timing was carefully planned to coincide with the culmination of the legal proceedings. Finally, the day came when the shell company was publicly exposed as a fraud. The media coverage was extensive, with headlines proclaiming the collapse of Innovative Ventures LLC and detailing its fraudulent activities. Jessica's name was prominently featured in the reports, further tarnishing her reputation and fueling public outrage. The fallout was immediate. The combination of public humiliation and the financial scandal took a toll on Jessica's remaining professional opportunities and social connections. She was now facing scrutiny from multiple fronts, her credibility and financial stability in ruins. For me, the final stage of my plan was complete. The meticulous preparation and strategic execution had ensured that Jessica received neither a cent of our shared assets nor any form of financial gain from her manipulative actions. The financial warfare was over, and the aftermath of her deceit was a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal. As I watched the final stages of the unraveling, I felt a profound sense of closure. The battle had been long and arduous, but the results had been decisive. With the financial protection in place and Jessica's downfall secured, I was finally ready to move forward and embrace a new chapter of my life. As the divorce proceedings continued to unfold, I knew that it was essential to ensure that Jessica's actions were fully understood by those closest to her. The public and financial exposure had been critical in dismantling her facade, but I wanted to take one final step to ensure that her closest confidants saw the true extent of her deceit. I reached out to a few of Jessica's closest friends and family members, people who had been supportive of her throughout the years. These were individuals who had stood by her side, and I knew that their understanding of the situation would be crucial in revealing her true character. One evening, I arranged a series of private meetings with these individuals. Each meeting was carefully orchestrated to convey the full scope of Jessica's betrayal and the calculated nature of her actions. My goal was not only to provide them with the truth but also to ensure that they saw how deeply her deceit had affected me. The first meeting was with Jessica's childhood friend, Claire. Claire had been a constant presence in Jessica's life, and I knew she would be deeply impacted by the revelations. We met at a quiet cafe, a neutral setting that would allow for a candid conversation. As we sat down, I began by expressing my gratitude for Claire's friendship and support over the years. "Claire," I started, "I wanted to meet with you because there are things you need to know about Jessica that I believe are important for you to understand." Claire looked concerned, her eyes searching mine for answers. I proceeded to share the details of Jessica's deceit, including the evidence of her manipulation and her financial schemes. I explained how the betrayal had not only affected me personally but had also had a significant impact on our shared assets. The conversation was emotional and intense. Claire listened in shock, her initial disbelief giving way to a deep sadness as the gravity of the situation sank in. She expressed her sympathy and concern, and I could see the pain in her eyes as she processed the information. The subsequent meetings were with Jessica's family members, including her brother, Daniel, and her parents, Robert and Helen. Each meeting was held in a private setting where I could present the evidence and share my experiences. With Daniel, I met at a park where we could walk and talk. I recounted the details of Jessica's actions, emphasizing how her behavior had been premeditated and calculated. Daniel's reaction was a mix of anger and confusion, and he struggled to reconcile the image of his sister with the reality I was presenting. With Robert and Helen, I chose a more formal setting, inviting them to a restaurant for dinner. I provided them with copies of the documents and evidence, explaining how Jessica's deceit had been part of a larger plan to undermine me financially. The conversation was tense, and the emotional weight of the situation was palpable. Each meeting served a purpose. By showing Jessica's close circle the evidence and sharing my personal experiences, I aimed to dismantle the image she had carefully crafted and reveal her true nature. The impact on her friends and family was significant, and I could see how deeply they were affected by the revelations. As the meetings concluded, I felt a complex mix of emotions. The process had been difficult and emotionally draining, but I believed it was necessary to ensure that Jessica's true character was understood by those who had been closest to her. The final impact was clear. Jessica's network of support began to crumble. Friends who had once stood by her now viewed her with skepticism, and family members struggled to reconcile their feelings. The emotional reckoning had achieved its goal, further isolating Jessica and reinforcing the consequences of her actions. With the emotional exposure complete, I felt a renewed sense of closure. The personal and public aspects of the battle had been addressed, and I was finally ready to move forward. The journey had been long and arduous, but the truth was now fully revealed, and I could embrace a new chapter of my life with a sense of resolution and peace. With the financial and emotional groundwork laid, it was time to take the final step in my quest for justice, filing a lawsuit against Jessica for fraud and emotional distress. The public humiliation and financial ruin were significant, but I wanted to ensure that Jessica faced legal consequences for her actions. I met with Jonathan Blake, my attorney, to prepare the case. Jonathan had been instrumental throughout the process, and I knew that his expertise would be crucial in presenting a compelling case to the court. "James," Jonathan said as we sat in his office, "we're ready to move forward with the lawsuit. We'll be filing claims for both fraud and emotional distress. The evidence we have is solid, and I'm confident that we can build a strong case." I nodded, feeling a sense of resolve. "What will be the key components of the case?" Jonathan outlined our strategy. "We'll present evidence of Jessica's fraudulent activities, including the creation of the shell company and her financial manipulations. Additionally, we'll include testimonies and documentation of the emotional distress you've endured as a result of her actions. The combination of these elements should make a compelling argument for the court." The lawsuit was filed, and the legal process began. The courtroom was filled with tension as we prepared for the trial. Jonathan and his team worked tirelessly to present the evidence, meticulously detailing the extent of Jessica's deceit and the impact it had on my life. During the trial, Jonathan presented a series of compelling arguments. He provided detailed documentation of the fraudulent activities, including financial records from the shell company and correspondence that demonstrated Jessica's intent to deceive. Witnesses, including financial experts and individuals who had been affected by Jessica's actions, testified to reinforce our case. The emotional distress component was also carefully presented. Jonathan showcased the personal toll Jessica's betrayal had taken on me, including testimony from mental health professionals and documentation of the emotional impact. The aim was to convey the profound effect Jessica's actions had on my well-being. Jessica's defense was spirited but ultimately inadequate. Her attempts to downplay her actions and shift blame were met with strong counterarguments and evidence that undermined her credibility. The courtroom drama was intense, with each side presenting its case in a high-stakes legal battle. As the trial drew to a close, the anticipation was palpable. The judge's decision was awaited with bated breath. When the ruling was finally announced, it was a decisive victory. The court found in my favor, awarding damages for both fraud and emotional distress. Jessica was held accountable for her actions, and the financial compensation provided was substantial. The judge's decision had far-reaching consequences for Jessica. Not only did she face a significant financial penalty, but her reputation, already damaged by the public exposure, was further tarnished by the court's ruling. The combination of legal defeat and ongoing media coverage ensured that she remained in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. As the finality of the judgment sank in, I felt a deep sense of relief. The legal battle had been arduous and emotionally taxing, but the outcome was a clear affirmation of justice. Jessica's attempts to manipulate and deceive had been thoroughly exposed, and she now faced the consequences of her actions. With the legal battle concluded, I was finally able to close this painful chapter of my life. The road to justice had been long, but the resolution provided a sense of closure and vindication. I could now focus on moving forward, embracing the new opportunities and experiences that awaited me as I left the past, and its betrayals, behind. As the final echoes of the past faded, I found myself standing on the threshold of a new chapter. The ordeal with Jessica had been long and exhausting, but it had led me to a place of unexpected renewal and hope. The support and love I found in Laura, who had been by my side throughout the tumultuous journey, had transformed my life in ways I had not anticipated. Laura and I had spent countless hours together, discussing the challenges we faced and finding solace in each other's company. Her unwavering support and understanding had been a constant source of strength for me, and as we navigated through the aftermath of the scandal and legal battles, our bond deepened into something profound. One serene evening, with the first hints of spring warming the air, I decided to take a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought us together. We went to a charming lakeside park that had become our favorite retreat, a place where we could talk freely and enjoy each other's presence. Laura and I sat on a bench overlooking the water, the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle lapping of the lake creating a peaceful backdrop. I looked at her, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and affection. "Laura," I began, "I want you to know how much your support has meant to me. Through all the pain and challenges, you've been a constant source of comfort and strength. I'm so grateful for everything you've done." Laura smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the moment. "James, being there for you has been the most meaningful experience of my life. Your strength and resilience have been incredible, and I'm happy that we've found something real together." As we continued to talk about our hopes and dreams, it became clear that our connection was something special. We began to envision a future together, one built on trust, mutual respect, and love. The promise of a new beginning felt exhilarating, and we eagerly embraced the opportunities that lay ahead. Our life together unfolded with a sense of joy and fulfillment. We explored new interests, traveled to places we had always dreamed of, and supported each other in both personal and professional endeavors. The love and support we shared created a foundation of happiness and contentment, making each day a celebration of our new beginning. Meanwhile, Jessica's life had taken a dramatic turn for the worse. The fallout from the public exposure and legal battles had left her isolated and struggling. The friends and family who had once supported her were now distant, and her professional opportunities had evaporated. The financial penalties and the damage to her reputation had left her in a state of profound regret and loneliness. As I looked back on the journey, I felt a deep sense of closure. The quest for justice and the process of rebuilding my life led to a place of renewal and hope. Laura's presence in my life has been a testament to the possibility of finding love and support even after the darkest times. The contrast between our lives was striking. While Laura and I were building a future full of promise and joy, Jessica faced the harsh reality of her choices. The loneliness and regret that marked her existence were a stark reminder of the consequences of her betrayal. The final chapter of this story was not just about the end of a difficult period but about the beginning of something beautiful. In the aftermath of adversity, I had found a fresh start with Laura, and together we were ready to embrace the future with optimism and love. The past had shaped us, but it was the new beginning that truly mattered, and with Laura by my side, I felt ready to make the most of it.